Robots and AI will take over all jobs in the near future, and that's a good thing. Greetings, disciples of the bad dude philosophy. Let me discuss with you a topic that scares some people, while it presents an opportunity for others to fearmonger and thus push their own or their sponsors' political agendas. Automation began with the invention of the first invention. When the first hammer was created, it cost the jobs of several cavemen who, up until then, used to bang rocks onto their skulls to break them into shape. The first hammer inventor came up with an idea to make rock breaking more efficient, requiring less collective effort and waste of man-hours in society to perform. But it cost the jobs of traditional rock breakers. The caveman union of rock headbangers, no pun intended, gave him trouble over it. Even though they called themselves progressive unionists, they claimed that progress is not always a good thing because it can cost people's jobs. So, feeling justified and arrogantly self-assured in the political correctness of their beliefs, they smashed the inventor's face in with his own hammer, buried him and the hammer, and carried on breaking rocks with their heads, slowing down humanity's progress for thousands of years. The same occurred with the invention of the wheel. So many cavemen were dependent on their jobs of just inefficiently hauling small amounts of cargo slowly, bit by bit, with astronomical costs in energy and time for the whole tribe. But that didn't matter, as long as the caveman union of carriers provided its members the safety and carelessness of having a sure thing, but useless, secure job. Almost as if they were government employees. Fast forward a few thousand years, musicians were outraged when the gramophone was invented. For the first time, people could listen to recorded music. No one would ever have to pay for a musician to perform live, right? Musicians were terrified that their skills would lose value and that they'd have no income. What all these narrow-minded people failed to understand was that automation of music made it cheaper and thus more accessible to people, because in the old days only rich people could actually listen to music. This reduction in cost and therefore price disproportionately skyrocketed demand for more music, recorded and live. Not to mention that it created more types of jobs that did not previously exist and no one could even imagine, such as engineering professions related to the gramophone itself, or recording experts. A couple of centuries later, and now people consume so much music and musicians are so well paid, and any teenager can be a bedroom music producer and DJ. Automation is a win-win. It creates more jobs and it creates more aggregate product for society to consume with less waste. And it's more affordable and it pays professionals collectively even more. And yes, the new jobs created can be even related to traditional job descriptions before automation. For example, old-style musicians still exist and they do perform live even more often than before the gramophone was invented. They also compose, they produce music on sophisticated software, they sell on multiple platforms to satisfy enormous demand for fresh music. They work as sound engineers, film composers, DJs, radio broadcasters, YouTubers, and so on. Even cavemen who used to break rocks on their heads could now have a YouTube channel doing just that and making a living out of the impressionable idiots who would follow them. I remember when my DJ friends were bitching about DJ software years ago that allowed effortless mixing and easy DJing. Yes, more people got into DJing because it then required less skill, less barriers of entry, right? More competition meant less money for the DJs, right? But that meant that they got more gigs, so they ended up making more collectively. Now even some coffee shops have DJs sometimes. Venue owners get more cheaper DJs, DJs get more gigs, the DJ skill gets better due to competition and due to the fact that technology allows them to focus on more creative stuff since basic skills are automated, and the audiences get to enjoy more and more affordable DJ gigs. Society as a whole becomes better. It's a win-win, except for lazy people who want a safe, sure thing. Automation never made anyone sane hungry. Automation creates so much efficiency in the economy that it instantly produces economic growth, which in turn instantly creates demand for more consumption. More consumption of what? Well, the free market always finds the way. I don't remember any TV executives whining about YouTube that it would close down all the TV networks. Now, not only have TV networks evolved because of technology, but they are better due to competition. And there's so many opportunities for other newly formed jobs. No one 15 years ago would have imagined that you can make a living out of reaction videos. That's such a useless thing, but it pays because all our basic needs are being satisfied by automation. And so we must spend our wealth on other things that automation hasn't caught up with yet. So we invent other needs and therefore other newly formed products and services. Another example is Instagram. People were worried that models would lose their jobs since one amateur model after another were giving away their eye candy for free. The result? Every single model out there gets to be an influencer now, with opportunities for acquiring a following that the platform offers. And more professional models exist now more than ever, and they make even more steady income as influencers. Plus, the public gets to consume model visuals for free. Jobs are never lost due to technology. They are only enhanced, and consumption increases while waste in monopolies decreases. Automation, or technology for that matter, has made production of anything and everything so efficient that we now consume more and we work less compared to people 50 years ago, 100 years ago, and 1,000 years ago. No need for farmers anymore, and who cares? Machines take care of massive fields for you, producing cheap food, affordable food for millions who can then focus on higher vocations, such as scientific research, medicine, arts, Instagram influencing, and the greatest of them all, stand-up comedy. You think all that was possible when half the men were plowing fields all year round and the other half were building roads manually, each block laid down with their bare hands? With such inefficiency, there weren't many types of jobs or types of goods and services produced. Life was boring and technology only improved it. Try going back in time 100 years and explain to a sheep herder the concept of Netflix and chill. This reminds me of a scene in Back to the Future where Doc gets drunk and talks to a bunch of cowboys about how life was, or would be, in the future, which then was 1985. One of the things he said is that people run for fun, at which point the cowboys laugh at him. They couldn't comprehend that automation would make life so much easier, so that people would never have to run for work. So they did it for fun, thereby creating the need for other jobs. Fitness attire, heart rate monitors, personal trainers, professional athletes, sports drinks, you name it. Sure, there's no need for stable boys, even though they still exist today. But see how many other types of jobs emerged out of automation. Automation not only translates to economic growth, but it creates more types of jobs and therefore products and services that we never knew could exist, thus enriching our lives further. I'm sure when internet search engines started up, traditional advertising was thought to be doomed. Yet not only is it bigger than ever now due to competition pressures, but it has evolved, and you get more graphic designers and advertisers and marketers in demand out there, not to mention new job titles that didn't exist before, such as SEO specialist, content writer, social media manager, online market consultant, social and media influencer. Don't tell me that in the 80s anyone could deem such positions possible. Automation never creates unemployment. In the contrary, any intellectually honest economist knows that. Automation is just an issue for unions and their monopolistic hold on their dependent members, and for certain political movements that stand to lose their grip on unionized employees. They fearmonger and they keep them down. Nothing like fear to rally up support for you, is there? That's the incentive behind their resistance to progress. They'd rather be the one-eyed man in the land of the blind than have two eyes where everyone's got them. But that's what socialism is all about, right? These lying demagogues perpetuate the notion that jobs will be lost due to technology and that we need an all-powerful, all-knowing authoritarian entity, the state, to control it. Sounds like what the Spanish Inquisition was doing centuries ago, suppressing technology to keep the people blinded and submissive. They argue that technology destroys jobs. That's ridiculous because they treat jobs as a commodity. A job is not a commodity or any kind of wealth that you're entitled to and someone owes you. A job is simply your ability to find a way in a given set of circumstances to provide value to others who are willing to pay for said value. Technology simply changes those circumstances, and you must constantly adapt so that you don't stay behind. And it's not as hard as people think. Jobs aren't a commodity, like communist propaganda would have us believe. They falsely perpetuate the notion of a job as a commodity which they brainwash people with, even if a job produces zero value. For example, in communist regimes, there was technically no unemployment because they, quote unquote, created jobs out of nothing that had zero demand, like someone opening up doors in a public building, or 10 cooks working in a kitchen with 2 stations. That's exactly like unemployment benefits in today's Western socialist governments, but worse because too many cooks spoil the broth. A job has no value. The idea of you delivering value is what a job is. Self-driving vehicles will make all drivers redundant. Well, seeing as though it's not a job that requires huge investment in training and development, they can easily adapt to become moderators, monitors or programmers of said self-driving car systems, or for whatever need that will be generated after such automation saves society so many wasteful man-hours. They will be satisfying the massive demand that will occur in those fields as a result of self-driving car automation. Or they can choose to get into a different field altogether, since the world economy as a whole will have more disposable income to spend, and people will either spend more on what already exists, creating more jobs in existing fields, or they will come up with new needs. And the immense economic growth that will come because of reduced costs, then reduced competitive prices, then even more increase in demand and velocity of trade, they will find a job relatively easy, only if they want to, that is. Only if they're willing to stop sucking on their mom's tits for boring safe milk and go out hunting for some prime steak. Automation will result in all accountants losing their jobs. First of all, that's false. You still need a human to put his signature and his ass on the line for accounting to be of any significance. Accounting without accountability is worthless. Okay, the bulk of administration and posting will be done by AI and machines. So what? The massive reduction in costs worldwide will spark more spending in every other field out there. I don't see what the big deal is when most people in the world don't do what they actually studied. Do they call upon an almighty state to govern their lives for them, relinquishing freedoms for supposed help? If governments worked, then there will be no crime, no poverty, no war. Yet governments are the cause for all 3 of these, which I'll discuss in another segment. And by the way, accounting is the worst waste of man-hours there is. Man-hours that could otherwise be invested in research for alternative energy or medicine. Most of accounting offers no service to businesses, and it's just a control measure by tyrannical governments that brainwash kids into thinking that they have the right to tax anything and everything we do, and to know on which porn sites and sex shops we spend our money. Not to mention even more wasted man-hours on tax law, tax avoidance, and money laundering, just because the government wants to tax everyone, but only the rich get to evade taxation while you get 70 to 80% of your value taxed through hidden taxation, sucker. Technology allows us to consume so much, even though 70 to 80% of our income is taxed through hidden taxation. Yeah, it's that much. Yes, we can consume so many products and services except land, which is limited, and government made sure it's too expensive for lower classes. But technology already creates more artificial land, and it's a matter of time until it becomes efficient. To wrap things up, automation is a good thing, despite what your lazy, uninspired, secure job university professors told you. For each job it negates, it creates more jobs in existing fields, or it creates brand new fields, and it results in less wasteful production and even more consumption of goods and services by society as a whole with better prices. All it requires is that people stay in touch and up to date with technological developments and their effect on their industries. So yes, automation is bad for lazy people who just want a safe, unproductive, unsatisfying job and who can't wait to retire so that only then they can start living. At least they get a nomination for a Darwin Award. I don't feel pity for such people. If they're not accountable for their bad choices, I most certainly will not. And even when all jobs will be performed by robots, then we will all live like gods being served for free. And even then we'll still create new ways to provide value to each other. For example, paying for hugs, something that is already a thing in Japan, the land of automation. Now, what is not a good thing regarding automation is relinquishing individual freedoms to it, and by extension to those who govern it. We must never accept automation to be a source of intimidation for citizens who criticize an oppressive government, which is where China is right now, and the EU is following suit. They watch everyone's activity online and in public with face recognition software plugged into surveillance systems, so that citizens are intimidated into submission and into self-censorship with social credit systems that put the Gestapo and the Stasi to shame. I'm curious, what kind of job do you do? And how will automation and digitization affect it? Do you think it will threaten your job? If it does, how do you see yourself adapting and evolving? I'm very interested to know what you think, so please throw a comment down below. Thank you for listening. You're awesome.